This week, rapper and philanthropist Nipsey Hussle was shot to death outside of his store in Los Angeles in broad daylight, apparently by a man named Eric Holder who had previous beef with Hussle. This is awful, especially considering that Hussle worked hard to get out of the gang life and to give back to the community, to the point that he was actually scheduled to speak to the LAPD commissioner about how to help curb gang violence. He was also significant in helping to open Vector 90, which is a co-working space that he hoped would connect people in lower socioeconomic areas with Silicon Valley. He planned to open similar STEM spaces all over the country, which is pretty awesome. He truly seems like he was an amazing person, and the world is a poorer place without him. At the same time, his death has spawned a new conspiracy theory that we really need to squash before it overshadows his actual achievements. The theory is this: Hussle was murdered to stop him from completing a documentary he was working on about a man named Dr. Sebi. Let's start at the beginning, where there are even more conspiracy theories. Alfredo D. Bowman was a Honduran quack who established himself as Dr. Sebi despite having no medical degree or much of an education at all in New York City, and he claimed that he could cure basically any disease through a vegan diet and various herbs. And I do mean any disease. He claimed that he could cure leukemia, sickle cell anemia, herpes, lupus, even though, it's never lupus. Most famously, though, he claimed that he could cure AIDS, which he insisted did not come from HIV, which is a common conspiracy theory even today, unfortunately. He took out ads in several New York papers, including the Village Voice, with the headline, "AIDS has been cured," in 1987. To give you a clear picture, 1987, that's when America was deep within the AIDS epidemic. More than 500,000 Americans had HIV, while the Reagan administration just continued to plug their ears and hope it would go away. Not that there's ever a good time for a fraudster to claim that they have a miracle cure, but this was really, truly the worst possible time. Sebi had absolutely no proof for his claim, of course, because obviously if he did have a cure for AIDS, he would have become a Nobel Prize winning billionaire. But he didn't need proof. He had an entire city of terrified people with basically a death sentence hanging over them who were willing to spend every last penny they had on the long shot cure. And it's tough to say, because this happened back in 87, how many people he absolutely destroyed, how many people he stole money from and let die with no real treatment. 1987 was actually when the first real HIV antiviral hit the market. So who knows how many desperate people tried Sebi's useless vegan diet and overpriced herbs instead of getting real medicine. What we do know is that the New York Attorney General tried to stop him, at first suing him for practicing medicine without a license. That trial was a complete disaster, with the jury deciding that the state failed to prove that he was actually diagnosing people with diseases. The laws are way better now, and so no quack could get away with outright stating that they had cured AIDS. But back then it was much easier to wriggle away, and so he did at first, even getting a glowing review about his court case in one of the papers that he paid for advertising in, the Amsterdam News. But the state then later won a civil case against him, ensuring that he could no longer make any therapeutic claims for any of his products. So Sebi packed up and moved to California and continued to sell overpriced herbs with slightly more wishy-washy language in order to skirt the law. 3 years ago, that's right, he continued all the way up until 3 years ago, he was arrested and thrown in jail several times by the Honduras authorities for money laundering. They caught him carrying upwards of $50,000 onto private planes. While in prison, he contracted pneumonia and he died at the age of 82. Not a bad run, all things considered. But of course, the this absolute monster has attracted his gullible fans. And they started spinning conspiracy theories to explain what happened and to helpfully ignore that whole money laundering thing. They decided that he was silenced by Big Pharma, who were scared that he had managed to cure literally every disease and that they'd all be put out of business. Because we all know how much Big Pharma hates to find an effective treatment for anything. That's definitely not how they make money, by selling treatments for diseases. And they would never sell natural treatments or pay good money to buy up mom and pop supplement companies like Nature's Bounty and Puritan's Pride. And of course, the alt-med industry isn't nearly as powerful as Big Pharma, despite being in the same bed and worth on its own about $34 billion a year. So yeah, obviously Big Pharma arranged to have Sebi caught with thousands in laundered cash, and then they arranged to have him thrown in prison, and then arranged for him to get pneumonia and then to die of it. At this point, you might be wondering why I'm talking about Sebi in a video about Nipsey Hussle. Well, I regret to inform you that Nipsey Hussle is one of those people who believe in this conspiracy theory. I've talked about this sort of thing in the past. I won't spend too much time in this video going into it, but it is an understandable thing amongst people in marginalized communities to distrust the medical establishment and to develop these folk remedies and conspiracy theories and pseudoscience in order to replace science-based medicine. That's probably what's happening here. Sebi really connected with a group of marginalized people who desperately wanted a cure and were being regularly mistreated by the medical establishment. So yeah, Nipsey Hussle believed that Sebi had a cure for AIDS, and that he proved he had a cure for AIDS in that first court case that was thrown out. And he was making a documentary about what he thought was the truth. Nipsey even went on record to say that if they kill him for making this documentary, then people had to continue on to reveal the truth. And wouldn't you know it, Nick Cannon posted on his Instagram that he would take up that challenge and he would make sure that the documentary gets released. America may have escaped the AIDS crisis at this point, but other countries are still deep in it. And promoting this utter quack, whose company still exists today and still sells jars of herbs for thousands of dollars, this could actually cost people lives. Sebi was a dangerous fraud, and even though he's dead, he's going to continue to appeal to marginalized people who are most in need of science-based medicine, not fairy tales. If this documentary does come out, please don't believe the hype.